Coin traders, how we doing? What's going on? Thanks for joining me for the show. We're looking at Filecoin FIL on that ticker. Pretty big, substantial pullback from coming in on our trend high, which was up at a high of 1230. So pretty big price point. Lost daily structure, set a low, broke below the 50-period EMA. Lower high and a pretty significant sell-off with 2 bearish days. So typically that does signal a pretty much confirmation of this being a flag pattern, confirming this as that high. So despite the fact we actually set a higher low on this pattern, lower high, and then huge flush to the downside, pretty significant lower low. So actually lost a pretty good structure for the daily. Right now looking to kick up and break above the resistance of the 12-period exponential moving average on this daily chart. So we know historically that we've always seen this 12-period be a very nice guide to the upside in strong uptrends. So it is making sense that we do see it as a guide for resistance on a downside type move first anyway. So just like we do see on the run to the current trend high right now, big point of support along this 12-period EMA, confirming that as that nice level until we finally saw a close and break below that level. So that's why right now, eyeing this 12-period EMA so much. So you can see price kicked off in both of these instances, still maintaining a close below that level right now. But then obviously with a small bearish bar coming in a small body, covering less than half of the previous bullish bar attempt, we know that likely we are going to experience a little bit more bullish upside, especially as we have been seeing a taper off in selling pressure. So likely in that instance, especially after such a significant retracement, we're looking at almost 60% at about 59-ish. So pretty significant retracement going down to the low right now of the trend at 5018. So, but one of the things about that is we actually have a pretty nice level of closing support for all these days. So as you can see, we had over a week of just dip selling, and bulls ultimately recovered this level right at 575-ish. What's significant about this, though, is that if we look at the previous sell-off and we look at the level of closing support after we broke below exponential moving average support, one of the things is that, so for example, we were holding 50-period EMA support, finally broke below it, and then actually confirmed this level as support. So just like we were saying, one of the significant things about it is that if we actually look left on this big move, we were kind of looking at that support line being kind of the heart line for this overall sideways chop motion. Well, effectively, that's kind of what we have right now with this closing level of support. So if we actually look left, this is kind of more or less the heart line for this overall pattern that we saw that did lead us to the run up to the current trend high right now. So it is in line and following with what we saw on the previous retracement, despite it not being maybe necessarily as tight of a range on these exponential moving averages. We know that with a lot of volatility comes a lot of gaps with that. And then we also see a lot of spread in the exponential moving averages, which do make them a little bit more relevant and reliable for those guides to the upside or the downside. Right now, looking at this to be a point that we can hopefully break and actually see a run up to the next resistance point. Now, on the run up to the current trend high from that low point of support around 4 3/4 or so, around 487. After that, when we had our bottom, we finally saw a break and a movement above the exponential moving averages and just saw a huge, nice flood, confirming this uptrend to set the current trend high. So like we said, ever since we have been seeing a decrease in overall selling pressure, volume in general, but specifically with sell pressure. And that's why we do have this blue line as the exponential moving average for volume, just trending to the downside after having this very nice trend to the upside. So now pulling up some technical indicators, looking at the RSI, and as we mentioned, we pulled back almost 60%, which is on the upper level for in the upper range for a lot of altcoins, since we were seeing about 50%, some were pulling about 40%. So 60 was kind of on the higher end, but still kind of normal for a lot of other cryptos. And obviously after being very overbought here in this level with RSI closing at 84.11, and even still, we were looking at the RSI actually coming in for the higher high end price, being a lot lower in this RSI. So the RSI was 74.01. So got a lot of that bearish divergence. Obviously now with a sell-off, we were normalizing, especially after being oversold now on this big flush, which did push prices down to 501. So very normal to think that right now looking at a little bit of upside pressure. If we do zoom out, last time we did see oversold conditions was pretty much back in September, right before the big fall rally actually started. So we know that right now in these type of situations, especially in bullish, otherwise uptrend markets, these oversold indicators are always a better guide for being a bottom indicator, especially knowing that the support that we found was the big heart line for this big consolidation chop period, despite not being a perfect pattern one way or the other. And just like we've talked about on the channel many times before, when we do have very nice chop sideways action guides, that is a very nice point of support when we do get retracements. So that's exactly what we're seeing right here, given the heart line for this support. So big point of sideways price trading leads to, you guessed it, very nice support on the way down that hopefully we can bounce off of and kick back to the upside, especially maintaining longer term higher lows on this chart. Now, do want to zoom out to the weekly chart just because the longer term trends are a little bit more impactful right now. And one of the things to point out is that obviously, as you can see, we did get a nice bullish cross on these exponential moving averages on this weekly. But unfortunately, this big sell-off across crypto created this big sell-off bar that actually held a close below the 50. And the candle that just closed, we are seeing closing level of resistance. But on the current, we're actually looking to break that level again, so that way we don't end up getting a bearish cross to the downside once again and completely invalidating this whole big strength of the move that actually led to a tightening of these weekly EMAs, a flip of the bullish 12 and 26, and then finally crosses of the 26 and 12 over the 50 period EMA, setting up a completely bullish setup, but obviously now unfortunately had a complete sell-off and a break of that structure. But like I said, still maintaining weekly higher lows, and that's a very good sign, especially with this big long lower shadow highlighting that there is a lot of that dip buying. What's interesting to note about the recent 2 weekly bars of sell-off is just how minimal the volume actually is, especially given the volume that led prices up to the trend high, as well as the pullback on the shorter term that kind of kicked off this 12 period EMA right here. And so to have this much magnitude, where we actually saw the bodies, for example, from the open down to the close of the second weekly candle, almost 40% just in 2 weeks worth of those candles with just such minimal volume coming in, showing that there's not a lot of support and that a lot of that was kind of market manipulation. So it's not necessarily as much of a sign just because we don't have a lot of strength. For example, we have a lot of strength from the bulls on this initial run up. So we know that with a lot of volume, a lot of strength powering this move, this is a very strong move compared to this sort of pullback with very small volume, just showing that there's not a lot of bears that are actually in control, but it also shows that there's not a lot of support defense from the bulls. So if we actually zoom out, you can see how we've been seeing the largest amount of volume that we have seen, even since previous cycle when we were looking at a run up from about $21 level to the current all-time high right now, which is coming in over the $230 mark for just over 10x gains in that short amount of time from February until the end of March. So if we do continue to get some same sort of patterns, we're just going to see a lot of volume coming in, which would end up meaning a lot of big price action, just like we saw back in the 2021 rally cycle here. And we are setting up for a Wyckoff accumulation, huge accumulation period at the bottom. And now we are looking at that phase D, hopefully looking to that sign of strength being into a very nice phase E breakout. Pulling up technicals on the weekly, looking at very, very overbought weekly RSI. So first we were looking at 77.85, finally went in the trend high at 77.32. At that point, we were looking at stochastic RSIs being now top 2 above the 80 line. And as you can see, after that, bearish cross roll to the downside. So now we are below the 20 line and looking for that bullish cross to actually see prices pushing back to the upside, especially with the RSI finding a new lower low after cooling down. So RSI right now, we are looking at 49.34. So plenty of opportunity and room to actually see the next leg of growth and another trending to the upside for this RSI. So last time we actually saw overbought RSI, that level was on the last cycle at our trend high. Obviously, a huge pullback after that, but that did kickstart the bear market, not necessarily lead into the next part of the cycle that we are expecting to be a little bit more leaning bullish for altcoins and Bitcoin. Looking at a little bit more shorter term now on the 12 hour, specifically focused on the current setup here over the last few bars. And do want to point out that if we actually zoom out, you can see how kind of had a similar pattern looking here on the previous attempt before this flush to the bottom now. And right now, looking at a kickoff of the 12 period, especially after 3 candles did reject it, very nice bullish candle to the upside for that defense. Back tested this 12 as support, and right now you can see a couple candles confirming that level as support once again. So obviously from there, eyeing the 26 period EMA and then trying to form the same type of pattern. Now keep in mind too, this all comes after finding a very nice level of support at about 5.25. So looking to the upside, we would be looking at closing support just shy of the $8 level at about 797. Previous point of closing support, and then also a level of support before the huge flush to the downside that we're looking at. So ideally, we would be looking at focusing on the exponential moving averages for resistance first, since we are going to have to get above the 26 and the 50. And then finally from there, we would be looking at that price level resistance just shy of the $8 level. If we can reclaim all of those, that would likely lead to a flip bullish of these exponential moving averages. And then from there, being able to defend this $8 support level would be huge and critical in order to see the next run up and leg to test and try to set a new trend high above the current trend high right now at 1230. So overall, I think now that the Bitcoin halving is completed and sentiment is going to start shifting after a period of time of this sell-off and confirming some of these supports, we'll probably start to see a little bit more buying and upside pressure. But we do know that we could still see lower highs on that chart, so it is going to take some time to see a complete reversal and a formation of a new bullish structure on the daily chart. But we do know that we are still intact on the weekly charts for a lot of these cryptos, and we are seeing signs of a lot of upside pressure and bouncing off some of the lower supports on the weekly. So definitely some signs for bottoms to come in and the next period to resume, especially after about 2 months or so for most cryptos of just pretty big pullbacks. Like we said, 60% for Filecoin and a lot of other altcoins right now. But yeah, with that actually is going to go ahead and wrap up the show on Filecoin FIL on that ticker. Do post any questions, comments, issues, predictions, all that stuff down in the comment sections. Do love getting back to each and every one of you. Also, don't forget to drop a follow over on Twitter at @coin_trades is the handle. Looking forward to chatting with you over there. All right, well, if you enjoyed the show today, please hit the thumbs up, like, and subscribe if you haven't done so just yet to stay updated on all types of crypto content like this. That is going to do it for now, though, so stay safe. Appreciate all the continued love and support, and I will catch you back in the next video.